Hello everyone, my name is Mary Quinn. I'm Product Manager at Azure Functions team. I'm here today very excited with Fabio. We'll be talking about building service applications with .7 and Azure Functions.
That's right. So we're excited to share a lot of news, a lot of new information about what we've been doing for particularly the out-of-product model and Azure Functions. So Melanie, what are we going to cover today?
For today, we have a pretty packed agenda for half an hour. Firstly, we'll start off by what are Azure Functions, then .NET on Azure Functions. And we'll drill down a little bit for .NET on Azure Functions, specifically talking about isolated worker process, as well as sharing some great work we've been doing to enhance isolated worker process and some updates. So we also remember early this year, we announced some .NET versions to be end of life. So we'll also be sharing the brand new migration guides with our developers to help customers migrating from the retired .NET version to .NET 7. And always feel free to share your questions as we go. And by the end of the session, we reserved about 5 minutes for Q&A. So if everybody's ready, let's get started.
Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, I know I kind of, gave away .NET 7, but I really want to share. I'm very excited to announce .NET 7 support in Azure Functions is generally available today. Yeah, this is a great news for our customers. So what does that mean? It means .NET 7, we recommend you can use in production scenarios, as well as you can take advantage of all the greatest and newest features of .NET 7 with Azure Functions. Although a little bit reminder here, we also made .NET Framework supported in Azure Functions before host a few weeks back. So I hope everybody, catch up here. So I also want to have for our customers, because if you are a .NET developer, you may not be very familiar with what are Azure Functions and what the work we've been doing. So Fabio and I will be here to help you get to know Azure Functions, as well as share the work we've been doing with Azure Functions. So back to your day when you are a .NET developer. Imagine the first day you start your job. So a lot of things, it's just very overwhelming. You need to start your project. So you start to set up dependencies, configurations. There's a bunch of stuff to do to just even before getting started your job. But as a developer, I know you want to build a very cool applications. So with Azure Functions, we provide a ready-to-code environment for you. What does that mean? I mean, you still need to set some configurations, but it's much easier, and you can do so much more compared to what you did before in the past. With Azure Functions, it supports a lot of different triggers. So if you want to do for some scenarios such as you want to build a new web APIs, we want to process IoT streams, we want to process file uploads, Azure Functions will have multiple triggers, will support your scenario. It also enables a lot of different integrations with Azure services such as Cosmos DB, Event Grid, and Service Bus, a lot more. So check out our documentation. As a .NET developer, we know you love all the IDEs, Visual Studio Code, and so much more. And those IDEs are cross-platforms. So it's very easy to enable you to be able to develop in Windows, macOS, or Linux. And it's not really end there, because as a developer, when you start to develop your applications, the moment you start to write some code, and you're expecting, okay, now what can I do in my code? How can I make my code available in the cloud, in my dev test environment? It could be in the cloud, it could be in the server. We provide multiple hosting options for you to deploy to the cloud. One of them being consumption plan. That being said, this is a pay-as-you-go model. You pay only for what you consumed, and it's very highly rank to your requests. If you want to think of that, because this is a service offering, the backend infrastructure is managed by Microsoft Azure, and for you, you can save on cost. We also have some other options if you want to reserve your compute, such as Elastic Premium Plan, as well as App Service Plan. So those are options we provide for you to fit your business requirements. We talk about a bunch of stuff here. So what are Azure Functions? Azure Functions is an event-driven service compute service that accelerates your application development. as well as it enables our developers to focus on delivering value to your organization. You'll get that in a very second, because the internet experience that we provide to our developers enable you to leverage your expertise to use Visual Studio, VS Code. Those are the tools that you're familiar over the years as a .NET developer. Also, we provide command line tools. It's called Azure Functions Core Tools. Those three tools enable you to create your Azure Function app functions locally, debug. Then you can push your changes to Microsoft Azure. We made the process very easy for you. Of course, modern days, we're also talking about CI/CD, DevOps, workflows. It's also support for GitHub Actions as well as Azure DevOps. We provide native DevOps task, so you can use very easy integrate into your CI/CD workflow. What you can see as a developer, your inner loop is you can start using Azure functions, using those IDEs, leverage your knowledge you already have as a .NET developer, and you can debug your application. And it's very easy to push your changes to Azure. And in the back, you can take advantage of the fully scalable service compute that we provided. We help you to make your life easier. Okay, I think I talked about a lot of end-to-end development experience, and I know so a lot of customers talking to me, they really also want to have a very friendly programming model. So one of them being isolated worker process. And I'm pretty sure for isolated work process, we have a lot of benefits aside from our user-friendly programming model. Fabio, do you want to share something with us?
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about what the isolated model is, right? So you talked about functions in general, shared a lot of good information about folks who may be new to functions, want to explore the service, but they have some familiarity with .NET. For some of our existing customers, some customers who have been using .NET on functions for a while now, they're used to what we call the in-proc model, right? That's traditionally how customers deploy and develop applications against Azure functions using .NET. Which means that we are actually running your code in the same process as what we call the runtime and the host. And with that, it comes with certain limitations and certain challenges that we're trying to address with what we call the isolated worker process model. So one of the key benefits is what you just described. It gives us a different programming model than what customers are used to with the in-proc model, but something that is very close to what customers, it's a little closer to what customers are used to with the broader .NET ecosystem. So if you're working with an ASP.NET Core app, if you're working with a console app, you're going to feel right at home. No new concepts. You're just developing a .NET application, much like any other. In addition to that, you get some of the benefits with a more natural way to specify dependency injection, middleware support, a lot of additional benefits. But the key thing that I think we need to talk about is what enables us to make the announcement that we made today, which is the fact that the worker is completely decoupled from the host. So some of the host requirements that have existed in the past, particularly about the .NET version you could run on, those requirements are lifted. You have the ability to now pick new versions of .NET as they become available, as it is the case with .NET 7 today. So giving you a lot more flexibility on how you run, when you upgrade, what you get to preview, and when you decide to adopt and test new versions of .NET, and control over your dependencies as well.
Yeah, it's great. So do you also want to share what we've been making progress? Because I know for last year, we made some really exciting progress here. So I really want to hear, can you share it with our audience here?
Yeah. So because of the fact that the isolated process was newer, there were some challenges with the in-proc model, but there was a lot of stuff there that we all loved and we all wanted to make sure we kept with the new model as well. And we heard a lot from customers, on some of the things that were important to them when comparing the two models, what they wanted to see in isolated. So the team has been hard at work working on a lot of performance enhancements to the isolated model. That includes both cold start as well as throughput perf optimizations. Durable function support is something that we've been working at. We have a preview of durable functions out right now, so you can try it out in the preview mode. And we have additional enhancements landing here very soon. Binding support is one of the things that we heard a lot from customers. We have this very nice model with the in-proc experience that abstracts some of the underlying SDKs away from you, give you a very nice binding experience and the ability to use some of the types coming directly from the service SDKs. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. We'll talk some more about that. And enhance the HTTP trigger support, giving you access to the underlying HTTP request, add access to some more advanced HTTP scenarios, which is something that you have in proc, and we're enabling some of those capabilities for the auto-proc scenarios as well.
Oh, that sounds great. Actually, we also encountered some enhancement for .NET Azure worker in this article linked here on the slide. And so one of them being SDK type binding, and I know for people who are in working process, they may be familiar with it. But you also share what their experience would look like here.
Yeah. So let's dive into one of those topics, right? Let's talk about SDK type binding, what that is. And if you are a seasoned, or if you are an existing Azure Functions user working with .NET, you may be used to the model where if you use a binding, let's say a storage binding, you have the ability to bind to specific types coming from the storage SDK, which for a lot of scenarios, it makes your function a lot simpler. It makes the process a lot easier. You don't have to worry about how to set up the SDK and connect to the underlying service. But the runtime and functions is managing a lot of that work for you. So with that, we want to bring that same familiar experience to the auto-proc model. So we want to enable the same level of binding access that you have in proc in the auto-proc scenarios, bringing that experience in. So everything that you do and you're familiar with the in-proc model, when it comes to the binding types and the targets, we are bringing that to in-proc. Keeping that SDK abstraction that we had with in-proc, so a lot of the work on connecting to the services, retries, some of the defaults that you get and the behavior that you get from the host, that's all managed for you. And one of the exciting things that you get from that as well is a lot of performance benefits from moving to that model. So instead of going through an additional hop and have the bulk of the work done by the host, and have a lot of that data transferred to the auto-proc model to your worker, a lot of that's going to be happening locally to your function and managed by the auto-process environment. So a lot of benefits. Some of those are completely transparent and behind the scenes, but you get to benefit from a lot of the work the team is doing in this space here.
Yeah, I heard a lot from customers. They want to leverage their existing knowledge of in proc, and I also want to know how it works in isolated. They're also very care about the performance-wise things. I just can't wait to see the demo. Do you want to show us?
Sure. Let's jump in here and show a quick demo of this actually in action. This is a little sneak peek. This is something that we're going to be releasing soon as a preview, but I wanted to share with folks watching today, because it is something that we've been asked for several times, and it is an exciting thing for us to be sharing with you today. So what I have here is just a plain auto-proc app. File new in Visual Studio, that's the template you get. So that gives you the basic framework to work with. In addition to that, so building on top of that, I've defined one function here that uses an HTTP trigger and uses the blob input. So far, everything is the same as what we've had before with the auto-proc model, still very similar to what we have in proc, the attribute-based model here. One thing that you'll notice is different is the type that I'm using to bind to the client. So I'm binding directly to an SDK type that is directly connected to the service and gives me the ability to very efficiently communicate with that service and download the contents for that blob. And what I'm doing here for the demo is just taking the blob content, writing that out to my HTTP response, and that's what we're going to see on the way back. So let me just F5 through this. We are now debugging. We have core tools up, looking at the functions that I have defined. And for this particular function, if you caught the name, we are binding to the client. So this is the function that we're going to be using here. And I do have a breakpoint here showing us the debugging experience with this, and I have the ability to look at the blob client and see that that type is hydrated, is set up and connected to my service using this container as an input. And all that means is that when this function is executed, that client will have access to the blob for me. So I can step through this code here. I've downloaded the blob. I don't have to specify anything beyond what was defined in the attribute. Now I have the payload, and if I let this go, you'll see the response here on the screen, just with the information that was in the blob. And just to prove that I was using a blob, we are working against local storage here, so we can take a quick peek at the blob that we were using, which is the exact content that was used in the input parameter that was used for my function. So in addition to the client, we also get a number of additional types that the blob extension will be supporting as well. So again, giving us parity with the experience that we had with improc, we have the ability to bind to a stream very efficiently, the ability to bind to a byte array also in an efficient way that gives us some performance benefits when compared to the previous model. So even if you had a workload in the past that you were just binding to a string or a byte array, those will improve just by taking advantage of the new versions of the extensions that have support for this new capability. And that this last example here shows an example of us binding to a simple POCO that was defined as part of my application.
That's cool. So I hear a lot of customers, they really want to use it, but I think now the question is really about, if you are already Azure Functions customers and you're on Azure Functions v3 or even v1, how can we help customers move to .NET 7?
Sure. So not just for .NET 7, but a lot of the latest and greatest features that we've been working on, all of the enhancements that we've been talking about here, we've been working on migration guides and making those available, giving you some information on how to migrate from previous versions of functions to Azure Functions v4, which is where you have support for .NET 7 and a lot of the capabilities that we just discussed. So if you are on Functions 3.0, there's a link here for you. Use the Zaka link and you'll be able to find a migration guide that will help you get from 3.0 to 4.0 so you can take advantage of these new capabilities. If you're on the older version of Functions 1.0, we also have a migration guide for you that also talks about migrating .NET Framework dependencies to Azure Functions 4.0 using the AutoProc model.
That's I think our customers are waiting for this for a very long time because they have now the step-by-step guidance to help them move. So also, somebody also asking, okay, so what's coming next?
Yeah, so earlier, a couple months ago at this point, we've shared a roadmap update. There was an update from the previous roadmap that we had shared when we released Functions v4, .NET 6 support. That update outlined a lot of the plans that we have as a team, which touched again on our intention to close as much as possible the gap between the improc and the AutoProc models, provide parity when it comes to the feature experience and performance of both models, and eventually make the AutoProc model the default because of all the benefits that it brings in addition to the work that is being done to close the parity gap that currently exists. One thing that we wanted to make sure was clear, and we wanted to emphasize with the last update, is that a lot of that plan will be conditional on us being able to actually close those gaps, being able to actually meet the requirements and the expectations that customers have. We are not going to be pulling functionality away from customers and blocking them from continuing to use functions with all of the features and all of the workloads that they need to bring to us. So we shared that update a few months ago. We have another update coming in at the beginning of the year. But this slide here kind of shows the possible outcomes, what we have for the next version of functions, which will either be with in-proc model built in and still supporting the rich experience that we have with in-proc, or if we have parity with the out-of-proc model, that would be the default experience in functions at that point.
A lot of things actually hear from the customers is we listen to our customers. So if you have anything, any feedback you want to share, we do have a add function roadmap update. This is a link in this slide, so will be in the description down below, where you can create an issue because it's the same GitHub repo. You can share your feedback there, as well as just keep an eye on what's coming in the future for .NET on Azure Functions. Of course, if you want to get started on .NET 7 with Azure Functions, we have the documentation articles here, so you can use whatever the clients we want to work with, especially with the tools you're familiar with. So we're here to help you. Please feel free to leave your questions here, and we're really happy to take any questions. And otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.